Dobra večera. Greetings from Odesa on the shores of the Black Sea. An absolutely glorious sunshine. Fantastic weather. I certainly don't want to leave this city at the moment with this kind of vibe. As you can see behind me, we got the world famous Odesa Opera House with a fountain there. And just the other direction, we got the Primorske Boulevard and down to the famous Potemkin Steps that lead down to the port of Odesa. So, if you are new to my content, my name is Conor Klein. I help high-level men with living their dream lifestyles here in the region I call New Europe. So, the countries I mainly help my clients with are here in Ukraine, in spite of the Russo-Ukrainian War. And the alternatives that I like personally, that I recommend, which are Moldova, Kazakhstan, Poland, Latvia, and also Lithuania and Estonia. May also be going to check at some point. So today's live stream, as you see from the title, is going to be about Ukraine. And you can write your comments and your questions in the comment section below. I'm going to give a presentation and then I'll come to the Q&A afterwards. If there's any issue with the audio, please let me know now. And no one told me for 20 minutes, and obviously that is a bit too late then, because I obviously go through my entire presentation. And a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are looking for help with coming here to Ukraine, the other countries I mentioned, I have several ways to help my clients. One is my guidebook. It's quite simple. I have all the logistical information, my hospitality guides for here, the 5 principal cities that people are coming to that are safer than being obviously closer to the front lines. They are Kiev, here in Odessa, Chernovtsi, Uzhhorod, and Lviv. And my favorite cafes, bars, restaurants. Will save you a lot of time. You know where to go. Got that down below in the description to this video. Also, you got a similar guide for magical Moldova, the country next door. A lot of guys are flying into Chisinau and then coming here to Odessa. It's about 4 hours by bus. And there I have an exceptional hospitality guide for Chisinau. To be 4 summers of going to a lot of places, hundreds of places, to compile that information, and it is all down there. On top of that, there are my favorite 10 vineyards in Moldova, because I'm also a bit of a connoisseur of wine. At least I've become one since living in this region. So some of the best value wines in the world are to be found in Moldova, and amazing experiences to go out to the vineyards there, like you have in a lot of other countries, but lesser known to do it in Moldova. So all that below. If you would like to tap into my encyclopedic knowledge of living this region, I've been here for over 10 years, then you can jump on a consulting call and we can figure out a strategy for you. Set up your dream lifestyle. Maybe it's going to be getting visas. I used to work as a lawyer for almost a decade, and I have local counsel in most of these countries. Investing in real estate going to be pertinent to today's conversation about Ukraine, lifestyle, setting a social circle. The dating side, of course, my channel was very famous for that back in the day. It was actually the main focus when I started in 2018, 2019 with this branding. It was the old brandings, our experience, and it was basically about partying and dating the local hotties. So obviously, with the amount of experience I've gotten advising guys over the last, it's going on 7 years now, I am also a doyen in that field. So all those things put together, then when a plan, you can do the DIY version of it after a call with me. Link to my consulting is down below, and then you have my New York experience where you come to live an unforgettable week with me in a city that we decide on in this region. It can actually be a few cities. Recently with a client here, we've come to Ukraine, and we also went to Moldova, Chisinau, to Chernovtsi, Lviv, and down here to Odessa. So all those options, you get all the links to that down below in the description to this live stream. So I got that out of the way at the beginning. And wow, just this weather and this sunshine, pretty phenomenal. I just finished up doing an interview for Vodka Vodcast. Is my podcast that I have here. So with someone who's appeared on this channel in the past, Ben Cook. And yeah, we discussed how things have changed. The future of Ukraine is very pertinent also to what we're going to discuss today. So my mouth is a little bit dry because it's so warm. And how warm it is, it's about 30 degrees Celsius today. Well, maybe that's because I'm also standing in the sunshine. So here we are in the second half of September in Odessa. And this is the amazing weather. This is one reason to come. Last week I did a live stream where I dealt a lot with the logistics and the safety issue. If you do decide to come to Ukraine, the normal caveat applies. This is a country with the biggest war in Europe since World War II. So you have to be cognizant of that. as I outlined, the too long didn't read version of last week's live stream, it's also linked down below in the video description, is that while the statistical chance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time when there's a Russian rocket or drone attack is very, very small. It's about 1 in a million per capita per day. There is definitely a psychological element of being here when there is a war going on. You got air alerts, and a lot of people have been living with this kind of stress for many years, so you have to be aware of that and decide if that's something that you're okay with or not before you make the decision to come here. Anyways, I go into great detail. If you missed last week's live stream, go and watch it in its. You're going to get a lot of great information out of that. And of course, if you want to come here with me, then you have the link down below, or dive deeper by going on the consulting call, or you just want the guidebooks. That's why I have all these different options. That's why they're down below, so you can decide based on what you want to achieve and how long you want to spend trying to achieve it. So yeah, today we're going to discuss a bit more about, just if I can read my screen, maybe see if I move over here, is it going to be a bit better? I did put down some notes for this one, partly because I had to do my interview just a few minutes ago that I just finished up in time for this one. I call New Europe your elite path to freedom, and we're going to discuss some of the amazing opportunities that, especially in terms of business, if you decide to come to Ukraine at the moment. The genesis, the inspiration for today's live stream is from a client of mine who sent me some links about investment in the port. The port is just over there in Odesa. Got a little bit of an allergy since yesterday. And that prompted me to think, okay, I've already dealt with the logistics, the safety elements, and I also talked a bit about the dating scene and the relationships in the last live stream. But most of the guys who I meet here are here looking at the opportunities, especially post-conflict in Ukraine, and they are here because they want to get ahead of the pack and actually take advantage of the huge opportunities they're going to be. This is a country that used to have a huge amount of tourism. And it's not the same as Italy or Spain, but quite a lot of tourism up until, I guess, until we had COVID, and then obviously this invasion. So we will see a return to that, but this country will need to be rebuilt to a certain extent, especially more in the east of the country, and there will be a lot of opportunities. So that's what we're going to discuss on this live stream. So also things like real estate and the other opportunities that other particular industries that are doing well at the moment, and other things where it might be of interest to you from a business point of view. Let me see. You can start writing your questions down below and your comments. Let me just check that I dealt with all the comments from last week. Yeah, one thing that came up is how to thrive here, I guess. There's kind of a general statement to make, like how you're going to thrive in a new country. Well, you need to build up a network. You need to be really well informed. You need to have the context with the people who are going to facilitate you, not just from a business point of view. I think most guys understand that. You know, you need lawyers, you need other businessmen you're going to collaborate with, you need people who are going to be analyze the market for you, or help you with your purchases, do the grunt work on the ground. And also when it comes to lifestyle, it kind of goes the same way, but you're going to have to figure out, you know, not just on the business side, but is this a place that also offers a lot of opportunities if you were to move here as an immigrant. Most people who are immigrants, who think that they're looked down on immigrants, that tend to call themselves expats. I've used sometimes in my marketing myself, but whether you describe yourself as an expat or as an immigrant to Ukraine, or somebody who just comes and does business, just a visiting businessman, then you can really take the opportunity to thrive here in a place like Ukraine, because you have the skill set from having grown up. Most of my audience lives in Western Europe, North and South America, especially if you're coming from North America, and the business acumen that you build up there, because in my opinion, the US is still the best place to make money in the world. In situ, it's not the best place to live overall, in my opinion, which is why I left the US. I lived there for just over 2 years, a long time ago at this point, at the beginning of my legal career. And yeah, just here you can deploy your skill set, your revenue, your money here, and it can go a lot further. I mean, you can see, and it depends where you're watching this from. I mean, I grew up in Ireland, where the weather is pretty miserable, the climate, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to leave. And you can see why Odesa is so attractive. And this is kind of pretty normal this summer to have this amazing weather all the time. And we'll have it at least for another few weeks. And I actually like the 4 seasons changing as well. So for me, this just provides a lot of extra bonuses, not just about the opportunity to make money, but you can definitely do that if you come here. And then most guys are aware of the dating potential. If you're a single guy, that should be all pretty clear. I have lots of videos over the years on my channel about that, obviously with the caveats about understanding the local culture and having a social circle that's going to allow you to quicker and better achieve those goals, whether on the business side, the relationship side, or just quality of life side. Anything else that I wanted to say? Well, Drifter Dan, maybe he comes on. Maybe I address it if he decides to come on this live stream, because every week he's writing me stuff. And yeah, he seems to be hanging out in Berlin now, so I don't think he's very relevant to these live streams anymore. So I put in the title about the beauty of Ukraine, and yeah, just you have this. You just point that out first before we get on more of the business side. It's kind of a little bit hard for me. The sun will go behind the Opera House in a few minutes, and then I'll actually be able to see my screen a lot better, because it's pretty hard for me to see it right now. And yeah, you just have this kind of architecture. This is Odesa, and I'm not sure if it's that clear in this particular image, but basically most of the city center here in Odesa was built by Central and Western European, mainly Western European architects. The historical center, this was built by the same architects who built the Viennese Opera House in Austria. And then you have Bofu, who built the Potemkin Steps down there. You had, let me just think of some of the other architects. I'm forgetting who's an architect, who's a military commander. Because you have Langeron, that's a French name, but I can't remember if he was an architect or he was just in the military. The Ribas is from a guy called Ribas, Spanish origins. His actual mother was Irish. So you've had this mix of European cultures here, and you see the vestiges of that in the amazing architecture in the center of Odesa. In other cities in Ukraine, you have something similar, like in Lviv or Chernivtsi in the west, that were in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Lviv was also in Poland for a while, so you see all these vestiges of this old world architecture. I just want to point that out, because often when people come, especially here in YouTube, in the region, the best example is probably Chisinau, which doesn't have as much of this old world architecture, fair enough. There is a tendency for people to film stuff that just looks like whatever, the sad, depressing, communist style blocks on the outskirts of some city, and claim that's what these cities actually look like. But most cities in just a broader region, just leaving Ukraine aside for a while, have these like amazing architectural wonders in the city centers, and just really interesting backdrop, historical backdrop that goes on. Normally it's at least 1,000 years old. Here the city is a lot younger. There was a city before that was, I guess, was it Tatar or Turkish, Hacı Bey. And then when this became part of the Russian Empire, they on top of that basically, and they renamed it Odesa. It's actually after Odios. Anyways, they were basically alluding to the Greek history of this region when they started to build on what was originally there, and they built this Russian imperial city, and then it became part, obviously, of independent Ukraine. In between, it was part of the Soviet Union. So we have this mixture of architectural influences across the country, and in particular here in Odesa, it was one of the best examples where you have just like, really it feels like being in Central or Western Europe in terms of the architecture at the time. Other things like cafe culture, obviously with this kind of weather, you just have that kind of style, something a little bit similar to what you see in Austria or France as well, in terms of people sitting out in the cafes and drinking the great coffee. Lviv is very famous for that. That was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's in the west of Ukraine. And then you have capital Kiev, which a lot of it was destroyed. It was more destroyed city in World War II. But nonetheless, you have the Golden Gate area, which is really fantastic and a similar kind of vibe. So in terms of the beauty of these cities in Ukraine, in spite of this war, most of the architectural heritage is preserved. It hasn't been really damaged. And there is definitely the vibe of being in Europe. And I would say the people, definitely it is Europe here. I would say with this war that people in Ukraine are definitely increasingly more similar to people in Central Europe, whether we want to call it Central or Central Europe in general. I call it New Europe, because we get into then a debate about what is Eastern Europe, and that's for me just basically Russia and what it controls, or places way further to the east than here on the European continent. So you definitely have a very relaxing European vibe in a city like Odesa. We're by the seaside. I mean, there are some things that need to be improved, definitely post-conflict, like quality of the water in the sea, the algae, but in due course that will be taken care of. So just wanted to start about the beauty of just the cities and the architecture. Definitely there are amazing places here in Ukraine, and before the invasion 2022 everything was heading in the right direction. So much progress was being made, and post-conflict, and we'll get a little bit into later when that might be, expect to see the same, and actually for that to be accelerated, because now Ukraine is a candidate country to join the European Union, and also post-war there will be a huge construction effort here. I had originally thought it would start a lot earlier, that the war would already have some sort of conclusion. That was the hope back in late 2022, early 23, but it was not to be, in large part because of the Biden administration, the choices they made. But that is at this point history, and there's not much point in thinking back to the mistakes they made, in my opinion, or not from their point of view, the mistakes they wanted this impasse. So yeah, there's just a very, I think, thriving cultural scene. I think Ukrainians, especially in light of this war that started in 2014, are really proud, more proud than they were about being Ukrainian, of their cultural heritage, the food, traditions, and yeah, it's a place that has its own unique culture that has been forged to a certain extent in the resistance to Russian imperialism and as a contrast to it. And for me, that just makes it a really interesting place to be. And yeah, provides a lot of opportunities that you're not going to find in the rest of Europe, where things have developed quicker, and the opportunities that were there 10, 15 years ago, the kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of having, finding opportunities, those days are kind of gone, where there's lots of opportunities, but you're going to have to fight a lot more for them. As I kind of touched on, we got the idea of a Ukrainian identity that has been solidified with this war, and yeah, just the resilience of the people, how it's interesting for a certain number of people who are into the history and the culture, and maybe even the conflict to a certain extent, that coming here at this point is obviously an opportunity, in inverted commas, that point of view, and to actually understand what's going on in the ground and not rely on whatever type of media. Also touched on that in the interview I just did, like relying on headlines that you're going to see, or a particular influencer who's basically catering to an audience and just telling people what they want to hear all the time. You're going to find out, or at least be in a lot better position to find out what's really going on if you actually come to the country yourself. You just move over here. It's a little bit hard with the sun. We probably have that sun for another 10 minutes, I would say. And yeah, the opportunity is, there's going to be a boon, or a boom, depends which word you want to use, post-conflict in Ukraine. We're going to have, obviously, reconstruction. So there's going to be massive amounts of the country rebuilt, infrastructure. There's going to be massive investments. It's going to be on a path to joining the European Union. And on top of that, you're going to have certain industries that are going to thrive in this country. Agricultural industry is already massive. The European Union has a common agricultural policy where basically they subsidize, to a certain extent, farmers. If Ukraine were to join at the moment with the current rules, which will almost certainly have to be reformed because of this, because of Ukraine joining, they would be not just the biggest recipient of subsidies, they would actually get the majority of them. That is how big the Ukrainian agricultural sector is. It is a behemoth. And there's still enormous opportunities here. Ukraine has, well, first of all, has this climate. It's pretty damn good in the south, and also the black soil. It's one of the most fertile areas of the planet for growing agriculture. This is why the local produce here is so amazing. Like when you have fruit and vegetables when they're in season here, it's just like some of the best in the world. Obviously when they're in season, and all the time you have different fruits and vegetables that are, but it is really amazing. And that is one huge industry. With this, well, we had the IT sector, and I think that will return en masse afterwards, just because of cost efficiencies and the quality of the workforce and productivity that you're going to see in Ukraine. Obviously, with the current situation, a lot of them have relocated. Another industry that is booming because of the war, and it's unfortunate, but it is what Ukraine has had to focus on for national survival over the last 3.5 years in particular. That is the defense industry. And basically Ukraine, along with Russia, because they're the two countries engaged in this war directly, they are basically designing the weapons of the future. Well, the weapons of today, because they're both trying to win, are getting a significant advantage on the battlefield. And more, this relationship where at the beginning in 2022, Ukraine was basically pleading with its allies in the rest of Europe, also in North America and the US in particular, to give them equipment. They obviously were given a lot of equipment, but it came slowly, drips and drabs. They had all these restrictions on it. And over the years, and now we have the new administration with Donald Trump, it's hardly new anymore. It's almost 9 months that he's been there. And now they basically don't want to give any new assistance to Ukraine. But Ukraine, in the meantime, has developed much of the munitions and the strategies of how to conduct war in this new era, because out of necessity, in order to survive as the war has evolved. And there wasn't that much drone warfare in the beginning. I remember back in the beginning of the Bayraktar drones that Turkey, I don't know if they gave them or sold them to Ukraine, they were very effective, but very shortly afterwards they became very rare to see in Ukraine. Now they made a little bit of comeback again because the war evolved so quickly with so many drones. And a lot of defense contractors are here from allied states. Why? Because this is where the cutting edge technology has been developed. You saw with the recent incursion by Russia with these drones that flew into Poland, the NATO jets that were scrambled that shot down a few of those drones. I think it was about, they shot 4 or 5 of them down. They had to use very expensive munitions in order to shoot down, well, they turned out to be duds, basically, decoy drones. But even if they had a warhead on it, would be prohibitively expensive for countries like Poland, or if it's going to be Estonia or Latvia, to use that strategy if they were really attacked. So Ukraine uses and has been developing countermeasures to drones. First of all, they're designing the drones that are going to be used for attack purposes, plus they have the defensive capabilities, and this is constantly evolving. And now we see the revolt start to reverse, where countries like Poland, like the 3 Baltic states, and even the US are probably going to need to collaborate with the Ukrainian defense industry in order to save themselves a lot of money. Otherwise, they're going to have to develop all this themselves and figure out all the strategy and tactics themselves. But the Ukrainians have that experience. So this is, at the moment, a booming industry here in Ukraine. And also, I was just watching a presentation with, I think it was one of the government ministers. He was saying that he was asked a question about why the defense industry here, the individual companies, they're not allowed to grow so big because they're capped on what profits they can make, whilst foreign defense companies don't have those caps. So they were discussing how, the Ukrainians post-conflict, they wouldn't have those restrictions on them, probably become these enormous defense companies, probably with a global imprint very, very quickly. So from that point of view, it's a very interesting industry here in Ukraine at the moment. And I meet so many people who are involved in that industry. It seems to be the number one thing that people are coming with, because this is, where the front lines are, unfortunately, in this new conflict, and you can call it a new Cold War to a certain extent, although it's a hot war here in Ukraine. This is the dividing line between, let's say, European civilization and whatever Moscow wants to call itself on the other side. So that is something that's booming. Real estate is a huge thing, because one of my clients has sent me a link that now the price of property in Poland is double of Ukraine. A lot of Ukrainians obviously went there with the war, which also put upward pressure on the cost of real estate in Poland. And now at the moment, it's basically, rule of thumb, about half the cost here in Ukraine. And post-conflict, those prices won't stay that low. There will be a lot of factors that will influence in the short to medium term how property prices move. There's actually, basically, the main takeaway is like the price of property here in Odesa is about the same as it was in 2021. But everywhere else, it's going up quite quickly, especially in this region. If you look at neighboring Moldova, Poland, those countries, it's increasing rather rapidly every year. Whilst here, it stayed static because of this war. And post-conflict, again, there will be huge foreign investment here. Ukrainians, a lot of them live abroad and make a lot higher salaries now, and a lot of them will buy property back in Ukraine. Even if they stay abroad, they're still going to buy property here post-conflict, because the country they came from, and the opportunities are there to buy something in whether it's even their local village for a fraction of what they would have to pay in, say, Poland or somewhere else. So a lot of people are going to make that decision, so we can expect it in the medium to long term to increase dramatically in terms of value. So coming here now, the pack, because 99% of guys think the same way. When I speak to them, they all say, oh, Conor, I'll come after the war is over. I said, okay, I'll pencil you in for 2028 then. I'm being a little bit facetious. I am optimistic it will be in 2026 that we have a big change in events in this war. We just have an air alert right now, so you get to experience it here live on the camera. So now you understand when you hear these things what they sound like in real time. And yeah, just tourism will boom. I just wrote down some other industries that are definitely destined. A lot of it depends on, of course, what the final resolution of the war is. For example, the port here would be the main export for the grain if Crimea is not back under Ukrainian control. If the Azov Sea and Crimea are taken back, then obviously Ukraine will have alternative ports. But in the meantime, probably the port of Odesa is going to be the main port. This is why my client sent me some information on it. Yeah, just at the moment you don't have so many foreigners coming here unless they're really with a purpose, and it's the opportunity to get ahead of things. And you can wait until the war is over, but then the crowds are not going to be so small, and the opportunities are not going to be as great. And yeah, that's the decision to make. You can wait until the boom has already started to take place if you want certainty, but then 99% of other people are going to think the same way. I'll give you an example of a city that I visited. It's over 10 years ago. It's quite a famous coastal city in Croatia, Dubrovnik. And Dubrovnik, I mean, it's now quite expensive to go and hang out in Croatia. Croatia obviously has joined the European Union. It joined back, it's over 10 years ago at this point. I think it was 2013 they joined, so already 12 years. But back in the 90s, there were the Balkans Wars, and the historic center of the city was more or less leveled. A beautiful originally Venetian center that has now been obviously rebuilt. It was almost completely leveled. There was I think one building that they left just to show the extent to which it had been destroyed. But basically the Serbs shelled the city from heights above when there was a siege of Dubrovnik, and yeah, they basically trashed the place basically during the war, and this happened in a lot of different parts of the Balkans. But now look at Croatia today. Good luck buying cheap seaside property view in Croatia nowadays. I mean, the place has been absolutely transformed. Obviously, this did not happen overnight, but if you were gone in the early 90s, which very few people were willing to do, and invested in that kind of real estate, I mean, man, you would have made an absolute killing. So that's just an example of a city and how things can change. Before the Balkans War started, it was like late Yugoslav period until just after independence. Well, I guess the war started just basically with independence. So we'll say the late Yugoslav period, even growing up in Ireland wasn't that wealthy in the late 80s. It was only in early 90s. It had its just afterwards. But even I had neighbors that were taking their holidays in Croatia, on the Croatian seaside. So that had already started to take off. And Yugoslavia had a different system. It was not in the Warsaw Pact, for example. It was economically better developed than countries like Poland or countries further east that were more under the control of Moscow, whilst Yugoslavia had a lot more independence. So already Irish people were starting to go there on holidays, and Ireland wasn't particularly wealthy. It's one of the poor Western European countries at the time. So that was the potential that was there. Then they had the war, which wrecked a lot of the place. And then afterwards, they had to rebuild it. Took a few years. They joined the European Union, and now look at the place and how it is developing. So those are the different opportunities that are here for the medium to long term. And that is what I think is a good example to look at a city like Dubrovnik, because it had that historical center that was badly damaged. And yeah, that's a good city maybe as a case study to look at in terms of what could be the future of a city like Odesa or another city in Ukraine post-conflict. So that is what I will say about some of those different industries and opportunities that are here. So basically, if you are interested, I'm not expecting it to be everybody. I'm expecting there's to be a lot of naysayers there in the comments. I know that for most people, they're just extremely risk averse, and that's fine. It's a personal decision. You can follow the herds down to Greece. I think it was in a famous Blur song, right? Following the herds down to Greece on holiday. Back in love in the 90s. I can't remember what the name of that song was. And that is, of course, another way to go, and just wait until everything is over. And then you can come back with the hundreds of thousands of other people who want to get in on the opportunities, but the opportunities won't be the same at that point. And definitely in terms of getting in early and building the relationships that you need now for the post-conflict era, or even that you can take advantage of now and actually get the value out of right now, depending on what you're trying to achieve, then you need a plan in order to get there. You can, of course, just watch my free content here or other YouTubers. Although I don't think there's really that many people. Maybe just, you have Johnny FD, I guess he's here a lot. But I think he's about the only person who's a foreigner who regularly films here in Ukraine. And you will need to do your research. And I am here, obviously, to help you achieve those goals by saving you just a huge amount of time and a lot of money that you would otherwise expend trying to do it yourself by just looking at free YouTube videos. Obviously, if you're more serious about coming here and investing and setting up your lifestyle, you don't even necessarily have to be planning to buy something straight away, but just coming here and setting up your lifestyle, you're comfortable with the risk level, because it does afford many opportunities that are not available if you go further west. Like Moldova, for example, the cost of living is about 50% higher than here in Odesa at this point. That's one thing. And I actually like Chisinau a lot. It doesn't have this fantastic architecture, and it doesn't have the seaside. So there are two things. Chisinau has amazing vineyards, at least Moldova does, and it has the parks that are pretty phenomenal. And actually, my client who came with me, he liked Chisinau a lot. He probably liked it. It was between Odesa and Chisinau, which one he preferred the most. So that is something to bear in mind. But if you want to come here and have someone who's going to obviously be able to plug you into the right networks and just save you a lot of time, obviously in terms of staying safe, it's going to be better to be with someone or not, and to smooth everything over. And especially if you are also a single guy, which most of my clients are, at least when they start, and you have my vast experience of hanging out in this region and the kind of dynamic and different dating scene that there is. So that can also something that I can save you just a lot of time and maybe emotions if you invest in the wrong person. So here you'll get a more tailored experience in terms of the lifestyle, the cultural connections, and just accelerating your learning in terms of understanding this country and the opportunities that it affords, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's business. And, I worked as a lawyer as well for many years, and I have local counsel that helps me with the legal side, with visas, with real estate, and all that good stuff. And quite a lot of experience with helping foreigners relocate here. I had the #1 channel definitely for a more upscale lifestyle in Ukraine between 2020 with the COVID pandemic and 2022. This was a little bit of a boom time actually to come to Ukraine because it wasn't so closed down. It was one of the best countries in the world to live during the COVID times, if not the best in my opinion. And yeah, a lot of guys moved here, so we had a lot of guys. At the time, I had a lot of clients obviously getting their visas sorted out in residency and all that good stuff. So if you wait until the end of the war, what are you going to be? You're going to be a tourist. If you come now, you're going to be a pioneer in that sense. You're going to be the person that comes here and explores it and gets ahead of the pack. And when it becomes fashionable to come to Ukraine post-conflict, you'll have already stolen a mile, stolen a few kilometers on everyone else on the fact that's going to come here. So let me just quickly address the current situation in terms of geopolitics. I do have another channel for geopolitics where I dive deep into this. It's also a link to that down below in the description. Right now, the war has been at an impasse for about 2 years. Russia regularly attacks cities here in Ukraine with their long-range drones and rockets. Odesa is, maybe we get a big drone attack once every 2 weeks. It's a little bit more in Kyiv, some other cities, and it can be random in any day. Again, the last live stream I go more into the details about, what the real risk level is. It's about 1 in a million per day per capita. So when you analyze it, The front lines have not moved up dramatically in the last 2 years. Russia currently occupies about 19% of Ukrainian territory. 2 years ago, they occupied 18%. So they haven't made much progress. They've obviously had horrendous losses, and now their economy is under a lot of pressure. So it doesn't look good for Russia. And I'm just going to quote an opponent to Vladimir Putin. His name is Igor Girkin. He also used the nom de guerre of Strelkov. And he is not a very nice person. He is a wanted war criminal. He led Russia's original invasion in 2022 for the intelligence services, the GRU, and that included taking over Crimea and starting this war in the Donbass and this conflict where I guess they thought they would take over Donbass a lot quicker, but ended up in a conflict that went on a lot longer. So he now sits in a Russian prison, not because he's some pro-democracy guy like, well, we can call Navalny that, who obviously died just over a year ago, but because he doesn't think that Putin knows what the hell he's doing in terms of conducting the war, and he thinks that is going really badly, and he's a critic of Putin, but he's still alive. He's sitting in prison for, well, it's well over a year, maybe even 2 years at this point. You think of Prigozhin and that failed mutiny, that is why Putin has him sitting in a prison, because he doesn't want this guy to be able to potentially take the power off him because of his incompetence strategically, Vladimir Putin's incompetence. And he gave an overview of what he thinks is happening with the war recently. He said, whilst it's not impossible 100% for Russia to win, he said the chances are extremely unlikely because they won't reform the military, they won't mobilize the economy 100% for the war, and though they've done a lot on that, and they won't mobilize the general population in order to win. And he thinks it's either going to be a complete victory for Ukraine, or we'll end up with this continued impasse where eventually I guess they will have to stop the intensive fighting at a certain point. So that's what he says, and I think he's a good barometer because he has a good track record during the war. He is not propagandizing for the government of Russia. He's actually basically opposed to them, not because he likes Ukraine or Ukrainians, because he actually wants to win. He thinks they're basically incompetent and incapable of doing so. That is his prediction. That correlates with a lot of what I've said over the last few years, both here in the channel and geopolitics. So in the next few months, especially with the winter, the Russian economy is going to be in a lot of trouble, and it is unclear whether they're going to take those steps that are necessary in order to have any sort of realistic chance of getting a strategic victory here in Ukraine. And Gherkin doesn't think that Putin is capable of taking those steps, so he's basically predicting that Russia will lose the war at it. Or maybe they will have still a defeat, but it won't be as dramatic as a complete defeat. And in early 2026, we should see something happen with respect to the fighting. Russia will unlikely, nothing is certain. They have to find solutions to their problems, and Gherkin says they're just basically Putin is not capable of taking those decisions for other reasons, like Putin just wants to his main priority is to stay in power in Russia, and mobilizing the general population for the war, when he's been claiming it's a special military operation, goes against his chances of staying in power, because a lot of people might be upset when they find out that they're going to be sent to the front lines to keep his war going. And obviously the economy is already in trouble, so trying to mobilize it even further for the war effort is going to be problematic. And he doesn't seem to want to reform the military because, they also keep him in power. So with the trajectory, the way things are going, we can stay optimistic that in early 2026 we're going to see something happen that may lead to an end in the fighting. I did say at the beginning of the year that it's about a 40% chance I gave it that we might see a temporary pause in fighting this year. So I saw it as less than a 50-50, instead between 30 and 40%, and now we're already in late September. That hasn't happened, so we're heading towards it not being this year, but with the change, as I said back at the beginning of the year, with Russia's economic situation, and probably by the end of the year they'll be out of steam. More or less, their recent advances they're still stuck outside Pokrovsk for over a year, and that city was supposed to slow a year ago. So in summary, probably post-conflict, it will possibly happen sometime in first half of 2026. Of course, we can't say with any sort of 100% certainty, but that is the way I feel things are going. There could be what we call a black swan event for either side, like Ukraine suddenly collapses for some reason, or more likely that there's going to be something goes wrong in the Kremlin and in Russia. And that can happen. Basically, we won't foresee it. It'll just suddenly, they'll be playing Swan Lake on Russian TV, and afterwards we'll find out that something dramatic has happened. They'll probably stop fighting. But the chances of that, you can't really predict that at all. And the chances of that, well, it's on any given day extremely small. So more likely that we see it at that time. So I think in the next 6 months is a particularly active time to come to Ukraine. The sooner the better with the weather, because Russia has been pretty unsuccessful at blowing up the energy infrastructure long term. They did their most damage in 2022, that first winter, where there were a lot of times here, but recently there hasn't been such a major issue. Ukraine has found a workaround in terms of keeping the lights on and the heat on. So, but it would be better to come now in terms of avoiding that. So that's what I will say in terms of timing. And yeah, you can come as a post-conflict as a tourist and out on the opportunities that we're here now, or you can come now and avail of those opportunities they here for the pioneers, for the people who are going to be a little bit more forward-thinking. And that's a lot of my clients, the ones at least who come here. It's not all my clients. All of my clients don't come. They decide they're going to come. They want to go to the alternatives. That's also what I help my clients with. So that is, just to recap, Kazakhstan, planning to go very shortly to Almaty and Astana. He's organizing that at the moment. Regularly go to Chisinau. Moldova is obviously very close. It's the closest in terms of culture to here in Ukraine. But, you know, the price of everything is about 50% higher than here. So it will quickly, because it's also going to, on the path to join the European Union, it will almost certainly get there way sooner than Ukraine does. So you can also factor that in. Doesn't have the seaside and doesn't have this beautiful architecture in the center, but it does have amazing parks and yeah, has amazing wine and vineyards and also great food and stuff. So, and no war, at least at the moment, in Moldova. Also have my clients, we go to Warsaw in Poland, the economic powerhouse of this region in Europe. It is the biggest city that does not have a war, because Kiev will be bigger, but with 2 to 3 million people, Warsaw it has a lot of Ukrainians, there's a massive diaspora of Belarusians as well. So it's a very interesting city. It is a lot more expensive than here. It's probably double the price, but still going to be better value for money than being in a major North American or Western European city, but not by that much nowadays. The price levels are definitely approach parity more and more. And I also have my clients who go to Riga in Latvia. If I were single, as I say on a lot of these, if I were advising a single guy rather, I always tell them if it's just interested in the dating, they go to Riga in Latvia. Just have like elegant, educated, beautiful women. En masse, great ratio of men to women between 20 and 35 in terms of if you're a single guy. And it's the region, if you include Estonia and Lithuania, as well as Latvia, with the most models per capita in the world. It's really where you have that model beauty. If you don't like model beauty, had one other YouTuber, I commented one of these videos about Brazil versus Colombia or something like that, and he started saying, white girls ain't shit, man, blah, blah. If that, fair enough. If you like short, squat, less attractive girls, in my opinion, then, you know, teach their own. You can hang out in Colombia. I like Brazil, actually, a lot, in defense of Brazil. But for many other reasons than the beauty of the women. For sure, I think Brazil at the very top end in terms of beauty. You do have, of course, a lot of supermodels because of the mix there. But if you look at the general populations per capita, this is part of the world. And those are the cities I help my clients with as alternatives. But if you are planning to come here to Ukraine, and I had some clients who do come here, and I had a recent client, we did this trip from Lviv to Chernovtsi, down through Chisinau to Odesa. Then down below in description is the application form for the New Europe experience, and you'll live, if it's a good fit, because by application only, we will together go an unforgettable trip in this city, in this region. It'll just save you months, if not years of time, figuring everything out, making the connections, building your social circle, staying safe, figuring out all the best places to go and socialize. Obviously on the dating side, you'll have your Irish boy with you. We'll go party hard with baby parties. I think I undersold Odessa on the last live stream, because also on the Sunday night after I did it, it was also a phenomenal party. Very close to here, was actually over there. It wasn't at a secret place. On the Saturday night, to recap, I went to a secret party. Amazing electronic music, great ratio, cool people. And yeah, it goes, like, we have a curfew from midnight to 5 a.m. It is strictly enforced here in Odessa, but if you party through that, then you're not breaking the law, basically. As long as you're not out on the street. You don't have to be asleep during curfew. So yeah, that's the kind of experience you can have if it's here in Odessa or another city in Ukraine. And yeah, just in terms of business context, I'm regularly invited to, as I said, a lot of social events with a lot of local and foreign businessmen. We have this kind of cadre built up because there are less foreigners here. There's only a fraction of what there was before. There's different communities here, Germans, Italians, French community, also a bit of an American community that hangs out. So I've already plugged into all those networks. So it'll just save you just a lot of time and a lot of money if you want to invest in having me being here and obviously keep you out of trouble as much as possible. So down there, once again, I got a mosquito popping up. I got bitten on live stream. I think it was the last one, the one before. Down below is a link to the application form along with consulting and the guidebooks and a lot of other interesting content. If you are new to this channel, we have a lot of playlists down below for coming here, and you can see the videos. I also encourage you to go back and look at my playlist for the vlogs I made in Ukraine, because especially from 2020 to 2022, I made a huge number of vlogs here in Ukraine in different cities. Really gives you amazing flavor of the different places across the country. And I vlogged almost every city. I never finished the one in Mariupol, tragically, because I guess when it's liberated, I'll get to go back and finish it off. I have the pre-2022 footage that I filmed. But basically, most of the cities, I think there was only one or two I had never vlogged that were under Ukrainian control. So really, it's like an amazing catalog to go back and view. So go look at that playlist. If you want to go to the alternative cities, I have my cities playlist where I go nowadays. Going to be updating that very soon. And I also have the series of like tutorials for the dating. If you are a single guy, the 9s and 10s, I have so much experience here with dating for over a decade. And I've advised so many guys either through these videos on YouTube, my premium content, which I used to run, basically online programs, especially during COVID. I then put those into more video on demand programs. I guess if you're interested in that, you can write me an email, because I normally don't offer that anymore, but I do have the back catalog on a platform. You can write me an email at Conor@ConorKlein.com. That's also down below, so you can copy and paste it. A lot of people have issues spelling my name correctly. My first name is spelled Conor. I also have an unusual spelling for my last name, which is Clyne. So Conor@ConorKlein.com, and then I can give you access to that if you're interested. And yeah, what other playlists are down there? With the cities. Also, you can go through my Vodka list if you want to dive deep into the podcast format, where I go into longer, in-depth conversations. Just recorded one there was probably going to be about 45-50 minutes long. I used to say that I have more than 50 hours. I know why I picked 50, because it's probably over 100 hours there at this point, I'm guessing. I should probably cut it up and see the total amount of time. So again, be discerning, scroll through it, and pick out the ones that are most interesting to you. You can also binge watch, I guess, if you're into that, and spend hours and hours looking through my old content and my newer content. So let me get to your questions. And yeah, just an amazing evening. I started this live stream an hour earlier than normal, just because I also wanted to enjoy the evening a bit. I may go to that party that I was at last Sunday and enjoy this amazing weather. And I'm not sure if I'm in Odesa next weekend. It's possible I'm still here as one final weekend. I thought I would leave and go to Chisinau. So I may still go to Chisinau. I'm undecided, because I'll probably go to Chisinau in a few weeks. Just waiting for this client to confirm. Got the pop-up on my phone there. And then I can set everything in stone. In the meantime, why leave? Why leave Odessa when we got this weather and this vibe? And yeah, just a unique place. I also want to film some more content, especially the podcast format. I will have a video coming up about traveling around Ukraine, where I shot it in a few different cities. And yeah, I should have eventually, I keep talking about it for a long time, a video from Warsaw, a video from Riga as well, and a new summer vlog from Chisinau. But I think in the podcast format, I also was going to interview some foreign investors and businessmen up in Chisinau. Probably should have done that when I was there during the summer, but for the vlog, I filmed with some of them, some guys I like. One is even Moldovan. They own a very cool bar Merlin there. And yeah, also some other foreigners who are heavily invested. I'm going to wait until after the elections, probably in September. So it might be actually in the autumn when I film that. Let's just see what is the most convenient. Also, because we'll have certainty about the direction of Moldova after the parliamentary elections. We're at the end of this month, so we're about 10 days away. So with all that said, let me dive into the Q&A. So Later Grader says, hey Connor, seems you were right regarding Belarus. If you look at the street walking videos, it's clear the quality has nosedived. The country is dead. My buddy told me Estonia is a lot better. My face says, you reckon it's the best 3 Baltic countries? Okay, so I'm getting a basic dating question here. As I've said consistently on this channel, and I haven't been back to Belarus since very early 2020. The best of Belarus has left. It is very sad what has happened to Belarus. The country I lived through, it's like golden age, basically. In 2018, I was there, was I there in 2017 as well? But definitely 2018, 2019. I was banned for a year. I think I went in 2016 and got banned for a year. So I think I was back in 2017, 2018, and then 2019. They never held it against me, the fact that I got banned. But that's another, I have a podcast about that. When I'm watching it in replay, I'll put it down below as a link in the description. Otherwise, it's one of my earlier podcasts about what happened with that. But yeah, since August, around this time, 5 years ago, when Lukashenko delusionally thought that people still wanted him in power, and he kind of allowed people to organize and campaign, at least one candidate campaign against him, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. And then, yeah, he announced that he won in this crazy landslide, which obviously wasn't the case because he lost the election almost certainly by a landslide, because basically she became a figurehead for all the opposition to Lukashenko, including it was not just the pro-European Union opposition, but also the pro-Russian opposition. Basically voted for her to try and get Lukashenko out, and yeah, they weren't real. He did not, basically, they're not the real results of what happened there. So since then, he clamped down on the opposition, both pro-Russian and pro-European Union opposition, which path to go on, so that he could maintain his power. And young, dynamic people don't have a future in Belarus. It's really sad. I did speak to someone recently who'd been in Belarus. And yeah, she told me that less and less Belarusians living there. A lot of people coming from, maybe they're Indian or Pakistani. I mean, Lukashenko did say that he was going to bring, I think, did he say 100 or 200,000 workers from Pakistan? And they said a lot of people Russian accents, a lot of Russians moving to Belarus. Well, probably to escape Putin, but good luck with that strategy, because it's not looking good for Belarus that you're really going to be free from Russian imperialism. It looks like the next place that will be swallowed up, unfortunately. But yeah, a lot of guys ask me about, okay, Belarusian women. I'll tell you an anecdote. I got a phone call. It's 3 or 4 years ago at this point, because obviously the protest started and all that clamped down back in 2020. So it's 5 years ago. It was from a foreign businessman in Minsk, who I'd met a few times. And he was actually trying to unload his bar there because he said business is down 80%. And as a place to live, he says, as he was single, he said, and he didn't speak Russian or even well, very few people speak Belarusian anyways. I learned it, but that's another story for another day. And he said the women who are interested in dating a foreigner and speak enough English, they all left the country, basically. He said you just have some university students, which he said, yeah, he's interested in dating a 20-year-old. And he said, yeah, there's really no future here business-wise or personal life. Is, the girls who are here are committed to staying, who are like over 25 in his opinion. So yeah, it was pretty shocking. Just makes sense. And if you're dynamic and speak and educated, interested in the world outside, there isn't much future for you in Belarus since 2020. It's very sad. The best of Belarus is left. And even I see that many of the few YouTubers who are left here on this platform who are based in Belarus, I think about 75% of them left in the last year or so. They seem to have given up on Belarus themselves. So yeah, it's I'm not surprised that you're looking at these street walking videos and the quality is nosedive. Just think that if you want to meet a Belarusian, go to Vilnius or go to Warsaw or Krakow or somewhere where a lot of them got people and where they emigrate to. So very sad. I hope that can be reversed at a certain point. But yeah, I'm more pessimistic about Belarus without a war than Ukraine and Odesa with a war, because at least when the war is over here, a great future in prospectively. But in Belarus, the war ends and they get annexed by Russia if Lukashenko leaves power. It's going to be even worse there. So really sad. I was also asked gave an interview to it's more a relationship channel. I rarely give many collaborations like that. I think the last one I did is my interview with John Anti-Lifestyle, which is 2 years ago. And I may do another one with a dating coach who's based in Estonia. I kind of had said I would do it when I was there 9 months ago, but I wasn't super enthusiastic at the time, but now I think it might be just better timing to give him an interview. But anyways, because you asked about Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. If you look at models per capita in the world, number 1 is Estonia, number 3 is Lithuania, and number 5 is Latvia. The ratio of women to men between the ages of 20 to 35, it is, if you look at Riga, if you look at Tallinn, if you look at Vilnius, they're all in the top 5 cities in Europe. So basically you just have model beauty. Girls tend to be tall, slim, in particular in Riga, elegant. A bit more than, and also Lithuania. I actually like Lithuanians maybe the most, would I say? No, I like Riga as a city, maybe. Just thinking in Tallinn, it's kind of a mixture because most people are ethnically Estonian. They tend to be taciturn. They don't speak a lot until they get really drunk. They're like Finnish people. And I found it a bit more different culturally. It does have a Russian-speaking minority, but there's one good place that they go to. And I know the people run it. It's a super cool place. But outside of that, it had really cool cocktail bars. The best one actually closed recently. I'm like, man, what are we going to do when we go back? But we still have a couple of alternatives. So yeah, I think Riga just has a lot more to offer overall. And I find it easier culturally with Latvians and Lithuanians than with Estonians, with some exceptions. Obviously, I also made friends there. I spent 4 months there. And yeah, I have great memories of it, but would I go and live? The weather is terrible in winter, but that's everywhere in that region. I'd much rather be here in Odesa and southern Ukraine. Anyways, I hope that is of some help. Stay away from, the reason I was talking about, the relationship channel, I gave advice because he's saying he was watching these kind of street walking videos and he was talking about Moscow. And the reason Moscow might look a lot better is because Moscow is just a bigger city. So you go around that area, I think it's called Patricky. Of course, it looks super glamorous, but it's not really representative of the city. It's just like when you have, like, Moscow must be at least 15 million people, and obviously not for a small area. I did have a client who actually went on his own there, and he said he was very disappointed. He said it was very materialistic, gold diggery, and he's a guy who even speaks Russian and does well enough in all the other cities, but no, he wasn't a fan. So I would say, for a variety of reasons, don't go to Russia and don't go to Belarus. And I would say Riga in the 3 Baltic states, but you might have your preferences for maybe you like Finnish Estonian culture more than I did. I also met a lot of Ukrainians, all of those places, especially in Lithuania, with a lot of Belarusians, and then a lot of cool Ukrainians in Tallinn. The tech scene is pretty well developed in Tallinn, also in Vilnius, a little less in Riga. Brian says, I'll be down soon. My wife is in Odesa, lovely city, lovely people. Great to hear that, Brian. Oh, now I managed to take that part of my mic off. Hopefully it didn't affect. My client is asking me pertinent questions, so maybe I can't stay on too long about Kazakhstan and where to hang out. So I probably need to address that in the next 20 minutes, where we're going to hang out when we go there. Hilarious title, Epitome of Hubris. No, it's just saying the way things are. I didn't think it was that. Maybe you're just not familiar with my content here and the reality on the ground. That's what I think is like a huge value added for you to just see what's actually just like here. Here outside the Opera House. It's a huge opportunity. Unfortunately, these tragic situations, whilst for most people it's obviously a massive net minus, for some people it is a net positive. And, I think there was it the most millionaires were ever made at any time in history was during the Great Depression or something, or just afterwards, because the people who took advantage of the crash and other people's misery, they made a lot of money. I'm not saying you should take advantage of miserable people. It's not going to be that dramatic here. And there are a lot of opportunities to deploy capital and your skill set and get ahead of the pack and rebuild this country. I see it as a positive thing in that sense that you're helping Ukrainians with, number one, improving the quality of things here during this war, and then post-war helping with the reconstruction and development. That's net benefit for everybody, but it's obviously net benefit for you in particular if you come and you make the most of those opportunities. Later, Grace says, Croatia is a tough place for young people. Not sure they went out so much from the EU. What can you say to that? Just look at their GDP per capita and how it's developed and how everything is developed in Croatia. Yeah, of course, it's not a cheap place to be. But that's because, yeah, the economy is doing so much better. It's not low cost. They don't have to immigrate. Actually, you remind me, I remember when I was in the States 20 years ago, there was a girl that come from Croatia. She said she never wanted to go back because she was living in DC. She had an American boyfriend. She kind of escaped Croatia. And I was saying, yeah, it's not going to be a depressing backward country in the long run. But, okay, it was 20 years ago. So I guess for her, she's probably this stage in her, I guess she was my age. So she's late 40s and probably with a family. And it'd be interesting if I met her to ask her what she thinks now, because I was optimistic about Croatia's future. At the time, they weren't in the European Union, so she probably couldn't foresee how things would develop. Yeah, just if you want a comparison about not joining the EU, look at the place to hang out with Russia and just what their futures are like. Look at Belarus. It's just so depressing and sad. And yeah, they avoided a war because they went for the peaceful process. But, you know, now I guess a lot of the people, they live in the European Union and they get advantages of Poland and Lithuania and further afield, like a lot of my friends who are Belarusian. But for Belarus, it's so screwed as a country, unfortunately. It's hard to be optimistic. So, yeah, better to be in the European Union for sure. I doubt you're actually here, Jan. It's probably just a troll. Because it'd be weird if you came here if you thought that Ukraine was going to lose. That's not normally the person who comes here. Of course, some people, they buy into a lot of the noise from the media. And I just cite Gherkin. I mean, you're calling me delusional, but why, you think Gherkin is the Russian ultranationalist is delusional? He's the only realistic voice in Russia, because he's sitting in prison already, and he wants Russia to win. That's the difference. He more or less, his analysis correlates with mine. So it's something to think about. But winning, yeah, we also have to talk about what that means, because back when the invasion happened in 2022, I called it before almost anyone that basically Russia had lost, because the strategic objectives there were basically they're going to take over, at least minimum politically, all of Ukraine, and Ukrainians would lose independence. And it was clear after about 3 weeks to me that all this constant narrative, even in the mainstream media, the Western mainstream media, that Ukraine, every day they were supposed to collapse. I was like, they're not going to collapse. Russia's screwed militarily. Then Ukraine changed their objective. Russia's never changed its objectives, but Ukraine changed their objectives, and it became not just surviving the invasion, but actually reclaiming all their de jure territory. So it's not certain that they're going to achieve that, but Gherkin also thinks that either they will achieve that, or we'll end up in the current situation with probably Ukraine retaking some of the territory, but maybe not all. So is that a win for Ukraine? Compared to the new objectives, they didn't achieve them all in that case. Obviously, put all the Russian war criminals on trial, get compensation, get all the children back. There's on and different things. So maybe not 100% complete victory, but overall, definitely compared to how things looked on the 24th of February 2022, it will be winning and Russia will be losing. So later Grid asked me, how's the dating scene there at the moment? Probably both sides will have to do a good deal. There's no deal. I don't know why people, they just fall in this trap, because Trump talks about a deal nonstop. There's no deal. This is the bottom line. Putin, he can't strike a deal and stay in power in Russia. What is he going to do? It's too complicated for him. So he's just going to fight on until he thinks he will outlast the West in terms of their support and outlast Ukrainians. He's, according to Gherkin, not on a winning strategy with that. But yeah, if Russia mobilizes, then maybe they have a chance, but then maybe Putin is more likely to lose power. So, but you asked me about the dating scene. And then you say, this is always a great comment. Imagine being afraid to go to Ukraine, but going to Medellin. Exactly. Medellin in Colombia, way more dangerous if you were a single foreign guy than coming here to Ukraine, statistically. Way more dangerous. But I talk about that more in last week's live stream. Yeah, the vibe, it's great. I talked about it last week. And yeah, the ratio is kind of balanced, because obviously a lot of women left in 2022. But now when you go out, because a lot of guys are mobilized from the military, and maybe are not out and about because maybe they didn't register for mobilization. So yeah, it's pretty balanced, good vibes. What to say about it? Yeah, but it's not the only place that's good in this region if you're a single guy. So you can also go to Riga if you don't want the war. But it's obviously different to being here. Brian says prices have gone up a lot in Odesa during the war. No, and not for real estate, and not in hryvnia, the local currency. Prices have gone up, but the hryvnia has lost value. So if you're paying in euros or dollars, it's about the same as it was before the war, before the invasion in 2022. Roughly, I mean, maybe it's 5% or something. Because I look at my flat white, it's like the best, and I can track it from before. It's maybe 5% more expensive only. Conor is, which is better only for day? Okay, Riga. I would say probably Riga, because, but you need to be connected. If you're just a normal guy and you go there, you're gonna have no hope. You're gonna have a tourist trap. It's good if you can speak Russian or Latvian as well. It makes a big difference. And you can't be a tourist there. Like, they won't let you into the best places if you don't speak the local language. And you won't find the best places. Because you can ask ChatGPT, it won't send you the right places. I already checked it. So it's unclear to me. It's probably easier to find the places here. Yeah, you don't have a curfew there. I think if you're a higher level guy, they're both great from that point of view, but probably Riga. Are girls hotter in Riga than Odesa? I would say on average, I think women are better looking at the top end in Riga. I think here a lot of girls have the lips done, and I don't like that. They're a little bit too plastic for me. And that's something that's happened recently, the last few years in Odesa. So personally, I would think Riga. Pablo says Spanish tourists will return to Odesa once the Russians have returned the statues of Abreu, José de Ribas y Boyons to its rightful place alongside Captain de Gate. Until then, I don't know why you're talking about the statue. The statue of de Ribas is at the bottom of de Ribasca Street. I pass it every day. I pass it on the way here, so I know what you're rambling about there. And Captain de Gate will not be up on any plinth in Odesa, presumably ever again. Maybe in a museum somewhere. Moscow has never been a great place for single guys. Yeah, I only went there once, and I had a friend who was not actually from Moscow. She was from Western Europe. I had a memorable time with her there, but I went to hang out with her basically. But my friend was actually one of my classmates from my graduate school in the US for international relations. He was working a high finance job in Moscow, so he was single, and we went out every night, so he had a great time. But yeah, I think that is the feedback I get from guys. But is that just a biased group? Because if everything was going so great, maybe they wouldn't tell me or contact me. But then again, I had other former clients who went there, and they said it sucked for dating for some reason. I was surprised, but it is what they told me. Croatia will be like Greece, Spain, or Romania, a grain independent on tourism. I mean, what are you rambling about? All these, like, are you an economics professor or have any skill? It's just all this absolute rubbish. Like, Romanian economy, booming. These people live in some disinformation or misinformation bubble. Like, but a lot of people in these countries, especially older people, have this nostalgia for communism. It's like batshit crazy to me when the living standards were like a fraction of today. But a lot of the reasons that are probably they were younger and in their prime. But yeah, anyways, let's go on to the next thing. Croatia will be great in the future. How do girls from Odesa approach dating foreigners? I personally don't recommend any dating apps. Of course, you can meet people on dating. I'm not saying no one meets people on dating apps. But the thing is, the more women have options for dating, the less time they will spend on dating apps. It's not that they'll never be there, and it's impossible, but they have so little incentive to flick through a dating app because so many guys already invite them out, and they're just trying to basically screen through their options. So they're not going to feel the necessity. Guys feel the necessity because they don't have options, and they all go there, and that's why they're so male heavy, and that's why and even lower that you have the matchmaking. Again, there are people that it might work for the matchmaking, but I mean, in terms of quality, like the women who have options are not going to be a matchmaker. I mean, they don't even want to open a dating app, most of them. So yeah, they go out and they socialize, or maybe somewhere in the dating apps and they have a plethora of options. Plethora or plethora? There's a plethora, right? I got my stress right in that. Yeah, what I recommend is being social, going to right places, having a social circle, going out. There's going to be a great party down there after this. There's going to be lots and lots of attractive women. Not all of them are single, a lot of them are. Or I go to my favorite cafe, it's over there. And I just talk to the attractive women beside me. It's not rocket science, but you need to have obviously a strong frame, have good communication skills. This is also the thing I help my clients with, communication skills in general. So, and later goes, why don't you find out? Yeah, exactly, just come. Conor, I don't understand why a deal is so unlikely if territory is very shifting. Regime change is impossible. Regime change is not impossible. And regime change in Moscow, or someone else in the elite getting rid of Putin, is a lot higher. If he signs a deal, he can't win. A deal means he lost, right? But Ukraine knows that they can win in the long run if they don't sign a deal. So neither side has an incentive to sign a deal like Trump wants. Trump has his own incentives. Even if we take a very generous view on his behavior, which in general I don't, but okay, we'll say for the sake of argument. Like, what is this magical deal in his head? It's not a real estate deal where they just say this is the price and they haggle over it. And yeah, even in a real estate deal, if the price is too high for one party, they're not going to sign the deal. All right, so the war is because Russia's an empire and doesn't want Ukraine to be independent, and Ukraine doesn't want to be with Moscow because it means being poor. Look at Warsaw, look at Poland. That could have been Ukraine, but in the early 90s, their elite didn't try to join the European Union. They hung out with all the oligarchs and all the corrupt officials in Moscow, stealing money, just like the Russian elite. And yeah, look at the difference between two countries, even before 2022, even before 2014, night and day. So that's why we have a war, and Putin's first priority is staying in power. And a successful Ukraine that would have joined the European Union would have been Poland, most likely, especially if he didn't interfere. And what do you think was going to happen in Moscow if Russians see that Ukrainians are richer than them? You think they're going to put up a Putin in power to have to go emigrate to Kiev to work on a construction site and a lower class person, let's be frank about it, socioeconomically, than a Ukrainian because they have this guy, this corrupt, narcissistic, psychopathic dictator? Of course not. They would have eventually tried to get rid of him. This is a huge motivation for him. So, but there's no deal. If he signs a deal, just think, right, he signs a deal. I don't know what that deal is. We'll say he capitulates to most of the demands from Ukraine, right? He says, okay, they don't get legal recognition for any of the territory, they freeze the front lines, or even gives back some of the territory that he's occupying. He maybe even pays some compensation, like the 300 billion that's already, they're going to lose probably Russia anyways. They send back the children they kidnapped. Okay, they don't agree to the war crimes tribunal, maybe that's one compromise. And then what? What does he tell the people after? Yeah, we have over 1 million in casualties. I completely screwed the economy, and we got a completely wrecked part of Donbass in exchange. Do you think Russians are going to be very happy with that outcome? Is that going to make them look great? I don't care how much propaganda is. It's going to look terrible. Plus all those soldiers, what he's going to do? They're all going to come back, all these psychopaths who've been murdering people for money for the last few years, the ones who survived. What do you think they're going to do? Work as a mechanic in some small village in Russia for $400 a month when they'll be making thousands in the military and killing people and they're completely screwed up in the head? No, they're going to become a new mafia. They may even mobilize if they get a lot of resources to try and get rid of him. He doesn't want these people running around. So there's not going to be a deal. He will just keep the war going. He also believes, unrealistically, according to me and according to Gherkin, right, that he'll eventually win. He didn't get Trump elected, but there is an American president who doesn't believe in supporting Ukraine. Now he has to plot to get European leaders in power that will also not support Ukraine. And then he thinks, then I can finally beat the Ukrainians. I don't think he will win, even if they lose. Well, Not if they lost all the European support today, but over the long term, Ukraine will probably be able to build its military-industrial complex big enough to resist Russia all on its own eventually, because they're just more innovative here, more dynamic, the people, and more committed than what the Moscow has on offer. And a lot of the best Russians left, the smarter ones. They left and don't want to assist in the war effort. So, yeah, I just see what's this magical deal? Only if Russia really looks like they're in trouble on the battlefield, and maybe maybe you feel there's no choice. You can think, oh, okay, I can't win the war, so now I really got to grab what's left and try and stay in power. Then maybe you'll get some temporary pause, and then maybe there's an opportunity for a change in government in Moscow, and then maybe at some point a conclusion. But the bottom line is, without a Ukrainian victory, there's going to be no end to the war. Because a Russian victory, a Moscow victory, means they will just rebuild the military and invade somewhere else afterwards. And we've seen what happened in the Baltic States and Poland in the last 2 weeks. Drones flying into Polish airspace, Russian fighters spending 12 minutes in Estonian airspace. The U.S. under Trump doesn't look committed. He's not convincing in deterrence, basically. He's not doing anything. So, yeah, they will go for those countries next. In fact, they won't even let the military go home. They'll just redeploy them where they can't overthrow the government, and they can keep paying them to go and attack the Baltic States. Do I think that would work? No. I think the other European partners of Estonia, Latvia, and Poland, and Lithuania, they will defend them, and they would lose, but they will definitely try more provocations. That was the conclusion in my video from the Geopolitics channel. Expect in the next week, the following week, to be more provocations by Moscow against NATO countries until they're deterred. So let me go back and see. So that's why later greater, I just don't see it happening. It's always seemed quixotic to me, Trump's claims that, oh, it's going to be easy. I'm so surprised. He doesn't understand. He still doesn't seem to get it. I don't know if it's because his advisors don't tell him, or he just doesn't allow advisors who will give him a better assessment of the reasons for this war. And then Zelensky cannot capitulate. He won't be the president. And there will be no president elected here without massive interference and fraud that will agree to capitulation. It's just not popular. The opinion polls that people are willing to settle are that they settle for a deal that Putin would never agree to. So, Zelensky cannot capitulate. Even if he wanted to, even if they bribed Zelensky to do it, it wouldn't work. Because, well, I guess he wouldn't be president for very long, putting it that way. So, I just love when these MAGA types, or these pro-Russian types, to say rather MAGA types, the pro-Russian part of MAGA, when they claim that it's so corrupt, Zelensky's corrupt. If Zelensky were that corrupt, then surely Russia would have bribed him at this point. And the US probably would have bribed him to leave and capitulate. But no, that's obviously not been the case. So anyways, let me move on. But before I move on, I'm optimistic about early 2026. I've been saying for over a year that late 2025 Russian economy is going to get in trouble, and now we see it coming to fruition. So good things might happen. I think it will take another 6 to 9 months. It's not certain. So that's just the reality. Later Greater says dating apps are for leftovers. Yes, I agree. And then you got the Salvation Army humanitarian causes that go to matchmaker. Here's facial symmetry. Where is facial symmetry better, Baltics or Ukraine? Facial symmetry. I would say Baltics. Facial symmetry, that's too technical. I would say that, because we're saying the whole of the Baltics, they're probably about the same level overall, but different looks. Dom asked me, if you had to recommend one city in Europe that is easiest for dating based on the current city. Easiest, but easy in what sense? If you have high standards, then it's not easy in Riga. Just think it's the best place if you're high level, connected, got a social circle, willing to commit to the city for a certain amount of time, and like educated, elegant, beautiful, normally tall girls, then Riga's number one. And it's not overrun by tourists because, for some reason they're way less. They all seem to go to Poland. all the kind of pickup artist types nowadays are not ruining it in the Baltics yet. You're right about Putin, 100% right. Thank you for that, says Bring Bacon. Yeah, I already said Riga. Later guys, you'd be despite how stupid old people are, though. I'm not sure what that is in relation to. Alejandro says defend. Okay. I will need to answer my client. So this free live stream on YouTube will come to an end pretty soon. Write any final comments and thoughts. We were supposed to focus on like post-conflict and current business opportunities in Ukraine. And yeah, I mean, you can see the beautiful city of Odesa behind me, the resilience of the people, and yeah, the opportunities there. I think just this backdrop, it kind of represents it. So most people just see it through the lens of war and what they see in the media, whether it's some influencer or mainstream media. And not saying that like mainstream media, they show you then Russia blows stuff up, but that's factual. But they're money if they show you what things are like on the ground, right? How things are like in reality. They have an audience as well that they cater to, and they will always put a spin if they're going to be successful business. But it's just sad. But as long as you understand, like if I read something in the Guardian or read it in Telegraph, I know that yeah, they have different editorial boards. So obviously, completely, you have to view it through that lens. So it's been a very interesting summer here between Moldova and Ukraine. I think it's, for me, one of the most interesting parts of Europe to spend the summer in terms of the climate, the weather. That's the same thing, basically, the climate, the weather. Tautology there. I went to say the food and the wine and the weather and the vibe and the lack of tourism. Like it's, okay, there's a war here, but people don't go to Chisinau. Some of the best vineyards, definitely value for money vineyards in all of Europe. Beautiful parks. If you're a single guy, like, yeah, I don't understand it. But for some reason, I think there are even less tourists outside of the region in Moldova today than there were 10 years ago. I don't get it, really. But fine, I guess it's good for the guys who come here. And also lots of opportunities. I think the trajectory of the country, especially if the elections go the right way in 2 weeks and they continue on their pro-EU path, I think Moldova is going to boom. I think very soon we'll see people, even more Moldovans coming home, especially if they can work online, because it's just quality of life just keeps improving in Moldova from a lower base, and the infrastructure is poorer than you're going to find in Poland, obviously, or Czechia or somewhere else. Never mind France or Germany. But you have a lot of you don't have the inconveniences of many of those countries where you have a lot more petty crime, and that's not a big thing in this region at all. And opportunities, because this is on the way up at a faster rate. I mean, the economies in the UK, well, UK is on the decline post-Brexit, and yeah, the geniuses who encourage Brexit Britain may even get into power, like Farage. It's crazy when you think about it. The guy advocated for the worst political, economic decision that the Brits have made in a century at least, and he may even be rewarded for it politically. So it shows how shrewd he is and cynical a person he is, that he can be rewarded for awful decision making, which is why in democracy we advocate people having the right to remove their leaders. But apparently they're going to put in leaders who mess everything up. Anyways, those economies are more mature economies in France and Germany, so they have the ability to deploy your capital. Like I'm just thinking of a German guy I know who's an entrepreneur in Chisinau. Yeah, he just has more opportunities because you have to deploy that know-how and capital in Chisinau. That obviously is so much more beneficial to him than it would be in Germany. And he lives a better quality of life. So yeah, he's no issues like petty crime. Of course, infrastructure is not as good in Germany, but at the same time, he's amazing climate, good social scene. He's also single, so for him, definitely better to be in Chisinau than a major German city. Not knocking Munich. I lived in Munich for over a year, and I'm not knocking that the very top end of the scene there was certainly super cool. But overall, in general, yeah, it's like night and day. So yeah, the opportunities are here basically, and you can be a pioneer and come here and yeah, just help with rebuilding Ukraine post-war. Already put yourself in a good position for that, and even now helping with the resistance, especially if you're investing in the defense industry. Then yeah, you're playing your role, or maybe just decide you want to come here and check it out, see what it's like, see what's for you. That was the last client who came with me to, you know, as I said, Lviv, Chernovtsi, Chisinau, Odesa, and yeah, the cities he thought he would like were not the cities that he ended up liking, and he didn't really listen to me when I tried to explain that beforehand. That's why he flew to Warsaw and came to Lviv, feeling that it wouldn't be for him. It'd be better if he'd flown to Chisinau and come Chisinau here and then gone to Kiev. You know, he'll know for the future. And yeah, document your trip here if you come. Support Ukraine just in any way you can, spending money here locally, support local businesses, contributing to humanitarian causes and the defense of the country. All good stuff where you can play your role in, yeah, the biggest war in Europe since World War II, and helping the Ukrainian people resist Russian imperialism, Moscow's imperialism, and also helping the rest of Europe, because if Russia's not stopped here, they will definitely be in somewhere else, and somewhere else that I cover on this channel almost certainly. One of those other countries. Let me see if there's anything I left out. As a side note, because I know Drifter Dan will watch this. Yeah, he apparently went to Berlin. I already said that, so I don't know why he even is interested. I guess he will watch that this live stream. Yeah, he sent me his friend spend another 40K and spend a lot of time in Turkey. I don't really see why he wants to share this. It's not really relevant to this region, but it seems like he's given up on New Europe, although I think he was in Romania quite a bit. Yeah, it's not really for him, which is fair enough. He should just go hang out in Berlin. Seemed like he was having a good time, and more power to him. And maybe he figures out how to get residency there and not be drifting across Europe constantly, and that it works out. But he's a guy who doesn't want to integrate into local society and wants to hang out in a foreigner bubble and only speak English. So that's a bit harder in these parts for sure than in a Berlin or a London. But London's obviously, because everybody speaks English there, right? Because obviously English-speaking country, but you know, he could go to probably, you know, could you do it in Paris, maybe Barcelona, maybe in Lisbon, and just hang out in those social circles, just use English, hang out with other foreigners, kind of just ignore the Portuguese or the locals, and have your kind of like unintegrated foreigner experience. But you know, if that's what you want to do, then you can decide to do that. But coming here to this region, it's a different mindset to thrive, and he was not a person who was able to thrive in this region. It wasn't for him, but yeah, more best of luck elsewhere. So final comments and questions before I wrap up today's live stream. Again, to recap, reconstruction efforts post-war are going to be massive. They've started a lot of reconstruction anyways. Like the Danes were helping rebuild a lot of Mykolaiv, which is a few hours to the east of here. And lots of different countries have decided they will focus on rebuilding a certain oblast or city, so that if you're from one of those countries, that could be a place to get involved. And yeah, agricultural industry will continue to be massive. Grain, the port here, depending on how this war ends, if this is the biggest port that Ukraine has control of, obviously they export all this agricultural products. So much of it's going to be out of Odesa port. It will also boom. Maybe, I'm not sure with the port near to Mykolaiv, if it will be safe. I guess Ochakiv, I'm not sure if they can rebuild it, because it's probably very badly damaged. It's very close to Russian occupied territory. Kherson, I don't know what they're going to do, but rebuilding that town, repopulating is going to take a while. They also want to have a buffer zone at the very least, so Russia can't shell it so easily. Yeah, defense industry at the moment, massive margins. Play your role in defending Ukrainian sovereignty. And things have kind of flipped. Like in the beginning, Ukraine needed desperately aid from especially the US and its European allies and other allies to stay in the war and not get overrun, right? Once they had it and tried to achieve their goals. But of course, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, he and his advisors did not have a strategy to win. They never said they wanted to win. They said they would stick with but stay with Ukraine as long as it takes, I think, paraphrasing what they said. And they wanted an impasse, so they sent too little, too late, and then Donald Trump organized blocking the aid for months. So then, of course, it completely changed the dynamics on the ground. Then they ended up in a worse place than they even intended. But now we've obviously got a different leader and different dynamics at play. So that is looking forward to a change in the dynamics, because now Ukraine, over the course of this war and how war has evolved, are like in the cutting edge of warfare. They're the ones with the know-hows, and a lot of times the actual weapon systems that are relevant to how war is going to be fought in Europe or elsewhere around the world. So it's now becoming a situation where, number one, the security guarants for Ukraine are probably going to be the Ukrainian military, not NATO or not NATO Article 5, because it doesn't even look that strong a deterrence with the current US administration anyways. And the other allies of Ukraine actually need Ukraine's help going forward. I'm not saying they need it more than Ukraine needs their help at the moment. The dynamics are changing. In a couple of years, it may be the other way around. They may be pleading with the Ukrainians, especially when one of them gets invaded, to come and save them, and not the Ukrainians asking for the protection of like other European countries or the US. The US won't need Ukraine's protection, but they may need their know-how to be able to defend themselves better if they were to be attacked in the future. So it's a bit ironic, but we're seeing that switch starting to take place with, especially now with Poland consulting with Ukraine and discussing that they actually want to develop their own air defenses in conjunction with Ukraine. Basically, Ukraine is going to be the one who maybe even builds it for them. Who knows? We'll have to see in the coming weeks. So that sector going to be booming. And then real estate, if you want to buy real estate and, it's something that maybe you want to live in. As I said, real estate is half the price here now than it is in Poland. I actually talked with this influencer in Poland, JT, and I will go back to Warsaw at some point and film a proper podcast with him. But he was talking about how cheap real estate is in Warsaw, because he was comparing it to London. I was like, man, in Warsaw, relative, like it's half the price in Ukraine than in Poland. So yeah, there's just a lot of opportunities from buying real estate. Maybe in the future you'll rent out an Airbnb when post-conflict, when there will be a tourism boom. So many people will come to Ukraine, because most people probably couldn't find Ukraine on a map. Definitely not in the US, definitely not in Western Europe. Most of them probably. And everybody will know where Ukraine is and have this impression of Ukraine, and a much improved impression than probably they had pre-2022. So there'll definitely be a tourism boom. This is almost certain. Reconstruction boom, which is infrastructure will have to be rebuilt. A lot of it will be built new, and a lot of money will come in. We'll see. We got that 300 billion that's currently frozen mainly in Belgium. That will almost certainly never be going back to Russia, back to Moscow. It will help with the reconstruction here. I think Moscow probably owes Kiev about 1 trillion in compensation at this stage. So we'll see how much they end up paying back over the long term. But yeah, the future looks pretty rosy from that point of view, in spite of everything that goes on. So Bob asked me, Conor, what country will you spend the winter in? That is to be decided. Thanks for getting the name right, Bob. Not sure yet. I spent last winter mainly in Tallinn, and a bit in Riga, and a bit in Lithuania. And I don't think I want to spend another winter there. I think the winter, I will probably go to Riga for part of it. I don't know if I want to spend so much time in Tallinn or in Vilnius again, as I did, especially in Tallinn. I just don't see the business reason to be there. I think for the Baltics, Riga just wins hands down. It was a good experience to have lived in Tallinn and lived in Estonia, something that probably never would have happened in my life if it hadn't been for this war. And I will probably be in Ukraine with trips to Moldova, Poland. One client will come to Poland. He was supposed to have already come, but then he had to go to see his relatives in Brazil. So we have to still get the dates. Hopefully he tells me soon. So I'll probably be between Ukraine and the other countries that I normally cover here. So that's where I'm planning to spend the winter. I definitely prefer the weather here in southern Ukraine and in Moldova to the weather during the winter and the summer than the weather in the Baltic countries or in Poland or in Belarus back in the day. It's definitely more my scene down here. Okay, just to sum up, if there are lots of links below in the description of this live stream for my guidebooks, Insider's Guide to Ukraine, Insider's Guide to Moldova, amazing hospitality guides. Also, if you just want to tap into my encyclopedic knowledge for a trip here, figure out a strategy that's going to work and save you lots of time to achieving your goals, building your dream lifestyle in the region. Maybe you got a trip planned somewhere. I did one client recently who we hopped on a call and he thought that he would be better going to Warsaw, but after conversation went to Riga. Worked out really well for him. I think he was on, I think, the last 2 live streams here, so it seemed like he was interested also in coming to Ukraine at some point. So that's an option down below. Also, if you want to come here with me, have me with you, which was the best way to implement everything and have me guide you, keep you as safe as possible. And yeah, you get to party hard with the hotties of the region, no matter where it is. Even in Ukraine is possible again. Then you have my application form for the New Europe Experience. Also, I'm a former lawyer where we can discuss all the legal different points like getting visas, maybe even eventually citizenship, buying real estate, investing in businesses. And yeah, what else comes up on the legal side? In general, yeah, maybe a little bit about taxes. Although most of my clients, they set up their tax structure outside of the region, but it just depends on who you are. In general, you can apply down below. It's good. We'll jump on a short strategy call. Actually, someone applied this morning. It looks like a potentially good fit. So we're going to have the strategy call in the coming days. And yeah, it could be you here with me. And it will save you weeks, months, maybe even years. And who knows how much money by investing in coming here with me for the New Europe experience. And definitely, if you are focusing on the relationship side, investing your emotions in the wrong woman, going to be devastating over the long term. So those are some of the reasons. Also, won't be Billy Nomads walking around wherever it is, whether it's in Almaty or in Chisinau or in Riga or in Warsaw. If you're with the insider, as I'm known as, for the region, got local social circles. You can come out with my crew and party hard. Also help clients with their social media on Instagram and developing content for it more as a strategy, although we can film a bit of this stuff together. Depends on the priorities of the client. And that was one thing with Drifter Dan and his friend. 2 years later, I mean, they definitely improved it, but they have, yeah, it's another conversation. I advise you to document your real lifestyle, but obviously, like a CV or going to a job interview, show the good stuff. That's what I think social media should be for, and don't put fake stuff there, like filming with actresses and try to fake your social media, because when you show up the person, whether it's a business contact or with a girl on a date, most of them are going to realize there's just something, it's not congruent with the person on social media. And yeah, maybe sometimes it'll still work out, but probability is pretty low. It's better to screen to have genuine connections in general. It's just going to attract the right people into your life than trying to fake it and pretend to be someone you're not. And most people are going to find you out. Anyways, won't dwell on that for too long, but that is something else I help my clients with. So all that's array of different value that you can avail of. Got all the options down below in the description. So I'll give you a last view of the Odesa Opera House on this fantastic evening. It is now 6:45. I need to talk to my client because it's to do with this trip, and I've been on here for almost 100 minutes. I may have a final live stream from Odessa next weekend. Not 100% certain. I do like to do them weekly when I'm in Ukraine because it gives you this fantastic window onto the reality of Ukraine that's going on behind me. Depending on where I am, whether it's in Lviv, Kiev, Chernovtsi, Uzhhorod, or here in Odessa. Also, I regularly filmed a few up in Chisinau because I know it's of interest when I go back there. So probably we'll have one final live stream for the summer next weekend. Might be here in Odessa, it might be in Chisinau. Not certain which is going to be yet. It would actually be the election day if it's next weekend in Chisinau. But I will bid you a do pobачення, a goodbye from Odessa Mama on the shores of the Black Sea, where I've been wearing my Odessa Vibes t-shirt to represent here. And I will see you very soon, either in a video on the main channel, on the channel, or on another live stream. And Slava Ukraini, and I'm looking forward to a very bright and prosperous future for Ukraine and for you, if you're willing to come here and be a pioneer and not wait for all the crowds of people to come back and get ahead of the pack. So, ciao ciao from Odesa Mama, and chat soon.